Okay, so I think I can start. So, hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar that will give you an overview of how to perform an internal audit remotely. My name is Pereira da Cruz, and I'm an author at 𝗧𝗿𝗶𝘀𝗲. I do quite a lot of ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 consulting and training. Still, I also audit as lead auditor. So today I will share my thoughts about performing an internal audit remotely. So my presentation will be about 40 minutes long, followed by a 20-minute Q&A. And if you have a question, feel free to ask during my presentation instead of waiting for the Q&A session, okay? So of course, I'll also address any remaining questions during that time. We will later send you an email with a link to the recording of this webinar and to the list of articles mentioned. Okay, so let's start. So this webinar is to help internal auditors adapt to remote auditing, and I highlight internal auditors adapt to remote auditing, showing what changes are needed, determining risks and obstacles, and showing how to prepare, conduct, and report remote internal audits. So this webinar explains what can be audited remotely, the differences between remote and on-site audits, the tools and techniques for remote audits, and the risks involved and how to mitigate them. And this webinar is for professionals involved in internal audits of ISO management systems, 9001, 14001, 27001, 45001. Yeah, it applies for all those management systems, both beginners and experienced auditors, okay? Now, about the agenda. So our agenda for today. First, we will speak about what can be audited remotely, okay? Then we present the big picture, so where the stage for a remote audit is considered. Then what kind of activities should be developed during the preparation of a remote audit? That's the next topic. Then it is time to check how to perform a remote internal audit and what risks may occur. And then we close the webinar with a list of pros and cons of remote auditing. So, well, then we have also some major challenges based on the questions that I received before this webinar. So today we'll not include in the agenda the reporting and the follow-up, okay? We'll just see the preparation, the performance, and the reporting, okay? Now, let's see. So a remote audit, also known as an e-audit, is exactly the same as an audit, but using electronic means to remotely obtain audit evidence and evaluate it objectively in order to determine the extent of conformity to the audit criteria. So a remote audit follows the same audit process steps, so the preparation, the performance, the reporting, and follow-up. During a remote audit, an auditor interviews the auditees in real time, may use a computer, a tablet, a smartphone, CCTV cameras, even a drone, okay, to view documents, to records, actor locations, and interview people. A remote audit is not an unattended auditor reviewing an organization's computer files, okay? A remote audit is not an electronic survey or checklist of questions to answer. No. And the remote audit is not an email documents and records to be reviewed later. No, not like that. So this webinar is about remote internal audits. So if you want information about internal audits, about the program, about the agenda, the checklist, or the report, please check our free webinar on demand for internal audits. I give you the link here, okay? And by the way, during the Q&A, I have a set of, I don't know, I think 9, 10 questions that are specific, are not about remote audits, but are about audits in general. I will, if we have time during the Q&A, I will answer those questions then, okay? Another link that I leave here is a kind of introduction to the topic of remote audit. So it's this one. What are the benefits and barriers when performing remote audits? Okay. Now, about the scope, okay? So about what can be audited remotely. So during a remote audit, During a remote audit, you can interview auditees, and they can be in front of a computer, they can be in front of a tablet or a smartphone. And you can see their face and expressions, and they can see your face and expressions. And during a remote audit, you can review documents and records, either by sharing screens, either by, like I'm sharing my presentation with you, by sharing screens, either by focusing a smartphone or a tablet into a hard copy, a paper document, or record, okay? So reviewing documents and records on a shared screen is more effective than on-site because you have fewer outside signals and noise interfering with the message. So you can see me, right? You can see me right now, okay? So I'm using these earphones here, okay? So because I'm hearing these earphones, I'm more concentrated, more focused. And when we are doing these remote audits, because we are seeing just that, what is shared on the screen, it's like it's easier to check, to verify, to study documentation in the screen than remotely than in real place, because when we are there are a lot of interference, there are people talking, there are noises, sounds, smells. No, we are focused on specifically on what we are seeing in the screen. So that's why I say that reviewing hard copies of documents and records can be done with the use of tablets and smartphones. They are easier to carry to any part as long as there is an internet connection, that we must guarantee that. The auditee or surrogate or auditor or escort carrying the camera with practice will learn how to focus and stand still. Okay, so during a remote audit, you can observe operations with a tablet, a smartphone, a drone, a CCTV. With a tablet and smartphone, it is better to have a plan, a map. Okay, I will speak about that, of where you want to observe. Okay, normally it's not easy to walk and send quality images at the same time. So you can draw on a map the locations where you want the panoramic view of that area, and you can number those locations. That way, when you mention, I want you to show me, please, location number 3. So it is clear where you want the camera to move to, okay? So one can conclude that actually every activity within a management system can be audited remotely. Okay. Now, let's see the big picture, okay? So a remote audit follows the same audit process steps: that prepare, perform, report, and follow up. Let us consider the first 3 steps. So about preparing, you will still need to study the documentation, okay, and prepare an agenda. But now there are more things to consider during the preparation, okay? So you need to consider what documentation may be studied before the audit, what documentation can be shared with you before the audit. So while preparing the agenda, you will follow a path in your investigation. So you schedule when you want to audit a topic, with whom, and for how long. So the agenda is relevant for knowing who do you want to speak with, what documentation, where the places where you want to go. During remote audits, including operations and warehouses, it is useful to prepare a map of where you want to be taken, either for a site tour or for verifying operations or conditions. So, for example, if you are doing environmental, health and safety audits, that's really useful, okay, to go to the locations. For example, you may want to check how wastes are being segregated or how waste bins are being maintained. Also, while preparing the agenda, you may also include a predefined list of documentation to be available, okay? Concerning the time frame for conducting the remote audit, you can have a smaller scope, and you can split the audit into, let's say, 4 hours per day for 2 or 3 days. So you are no longer prisoner of 8-hour days, okay? So yesterday I went to do an audit about 60, 70 kilometers away from my office. So I go there, I stay there 8 hours doing. But if I was doing that remotely, I can do 2 hours in one day, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours after. No, there's no, our freedom, we are much more free to decide that, okay? Now, What more is relevant in this big picture, in the preparation? So is there a reliable internet connection? Is that connection available in all areas of the audit scope? Okay, so that's important. What software will be used during the audit? So nowadays there are an increasing number of options. Normally when I do this, so I use the software that the customer indicates. So that's what I use. But we need to decide on that. What hardware are available and is going to be used during the audit? So a computer, a smartphone, a tablet, a drone, CCTV camera. So it is better for you to use headphones to cut noise. Be aware of autonomy, so of battery life of that tablet or smartphone. Okay. And by the way, who will hold the tablet or smartphone for you during the audit? So an auditee or a surrogate auditor. So about performing, now let's go to the second step about performing. You may decide to have an opening meeting, okay, where you present yourself through video conferencing, where you may ask auditees to sign their presence in an online collaborative document, and where you confirm the schedule for the internal audit. Then, based on your checklist, you start performing your internal audit. So you will interview auditees face-to-face with a webcam on a computer or a tablet, through video conferencing applications, or with a video call on a smartphone. So yeah, there are a lot of options now for video conferencing. So you may ask permission, okay? You may ask permission and record those conversations. So Claudio is asking, is it correct and good practice to record the remote audit? So normally I don't record everything. I don't record conversations, okay, because I take notes. But if I decide that I need that, I ask permission and I do that if they allow me. Normally what I do, and I will speak, what I do is ask permission to take screenshots when I think I need that for the report, okay? You see here. So you ask permissions and you can take, you can audit, during those conversations, you can audit documents and records, either through share screen, documents and records, share screen for those in the digital format, or through focusing the camera for those in paper format. And if you want to keep a copy of a document or record to support a finding to include in your report, okay, you ask permission. Never forget that. You ask permission, and you can take a screenshot. And you may observe operations with a tablet, or a smartphone, or a drone, or a CCTV. So it is here that map prepared before becomes useful. So with permission, you may take screenshots of what you see and use that together with the interviews and the documents and records and record checking. So auditors should not take screenshots of auditees as audit evidence, okay? Any screenshot of documents or records or other kind of evidence should be previously authorized by the audited organization. Normally, during internal audits, that's normally no big problem. With external audits, that's more sensible. So about reporting, you will still have to write a report with your findings. Yeah, you will still hold a closing meeting where you can share your screen and present your report with findings and conclusions. Again, this one here, when we present the report, I think people are more focused on the content of the report than in real life when we are there, because everybody is looking into the same screen at the same time. Yeah. And where with permission, you may record that meeting and get participants to sign their presence, okay? So I leave here link for 2 articles. One is internal audits in the EMS, 5 main steps. And the other one is what is the ISO 9001 audit program and how does it work? It's like this. I present here in this particular webinar, I present some links that are about ISO 14000 articles. Others are about ISO 9001, 27001, 45001, and even others. But if you work, for example, with 27001, but if you look into these articles, you can get relevant information for you, like these 5 main steps, okay? Because clause 9.2 is the same, almost the same in all standards, okay? Right, and the other article, what is the ISO 9001? I already mentioned 9000 or 9001 audit program, and how does it work? Yeah, okay. So now we are going to do a remote audit. Let's prepare the remote audit, okay? So like the other audits, we need to prepare. What will be different? Let's see what will be different during the preparation. So ask auditees to find a quiet office room where the interview and document checking can take place without disturbances. Check with the auditees well in advance, 1 or 2 weeks before the audit, if there is a stable internet connection, and if is there any area of the organization where there is no Wi-Fi connection. So, for example, you may need to audit the -3 floor of a hotel where they keep their cold rooms, and normally there's no internet there. Or yeah, check with the auditees if there will be available a computer or a tablet or a smartphone for the interviews and for document sharing and observations. So you must already have a draft of your agenda, okay, knowing who you want to interview and what you want to see. While preparing, so for example, while preparing my first remote internal audit, I found one auditee with a desktop computer without webcam, okay. Can we perform an interview without a webcam? Yes, but if we can use one, it's much better, okay? Also, it may be useful to test with the auditees the use of the tablet or smartphone to observe operations. So you need to agree with the auditees what video conference software you will use. Some of the software allow you to engage in a conversation, allow you to share screen and record sound and video. And if you intend, again, I stress this because this is important, this is respecting the others. And if you intend to take screenshot copies of a document of any kind or pictures of the operations or recordings of interviews or meetings, ask for permission in advance, okay? Conducting a trial meeting using the same media platforms agreed in advance, it is advisable to check if any unplanned event occurs, okay? So agree with the auditees what documents you need to in advance to prepare your audit. So how will they be shared with you? Okay, what documents and records you will need to check during the audit? Which ones will be hard copies? When auditing operations, I find it useful to ask for a floor plan or process diagram of the remote locations for designing with the auditees the flow for the smartphone or tablet part of the audit. So later we will see how the map can be used, okay? Agree with the auditees will handle the tablet or smartphone and follow your instructions during the audit, where and what to point the camera to. So can a person from the audited organization perform that role? Do you need to get someone from outside to do that job? Okay, I think it's something that you need to agree. Finally, agree on security measures to protect confidential information and the connection. So it is recommended to prepare checklist with minimum requirements such as internet upload and download speeds for each technology, and to share this checklist in advance with the sites to be audited. I will leave here the link for 2 articles. One is how to ISO 9001, how to prepare for an internal audit. And the other one is please check, is our free webinar on demand, how to use ISO 27001 to secure data when working remotely. Okay, so how to use ISO 27001 to secure data when working remotely. Jiong is asking, if a particular location has no or unstable Wi-Fi or wireless access, should we skip the real-time video or watch it later when the connection is available? So what we can do in these situations is, for some, when we have the conversation, is, so for example, remove the video, okay, and all the bandwidth is for the conversation. But if we need some kind of image to check something, okay, in that situation we need to show the video, or to have the video. Okay, if you don't, if you want a proof that, if for example you go to a place where there's no internet and you want a proof that they take a picture and the picture is from today, not from another day. Okay, you can ask to take the picture together with a newspaper of the day or something like that. Yeah. So, but that's an extreme case, not for internal audits. But you know, we never know what we can get. So what's next? Audit agenda. Okay, so according to my experience, it may be useful to use a map to describe where I want to go to observe operations. So I find useful to make some changes in the classic template for the audit agenda. So in this example, we want to start our audit, it's not here, but we want to start our audit at the offices, auditing marketing and sales activities. So for example, list of all commercial proposals made, which were won, which were lost, new clients, lost clients, complaints, client satisfaction. Then at the proposed time, okay, the surrogate auditor will take the tablet to local 2, okay, so local 2, molds in transit, okay, in the map to give me a panoramic view of the plant and of the place. Then I intend to interview the logistic manager and operators. And during the interview, I would like to check some work instructions in paper and some hard copy records like mold orders and mold labels. So in your agenda, don't forget to include the link for the video conference and your mobile number for solving any issue. Or you can send invitations to each auditee, one for the opening meeting, another for according to schedule for each auditee, and another for the closing meeting. That will depend on the situation. Now, I leave you the link for an article called Creating an ISO 14001 Internal Audit Plan. Okay. Okay. So, your workspace. Okay. So your workspace, not the on site. So you'll need a screen to see the auditees during the meetings and interviews and to see the evidence. A second screen, okay, may be useful to operate the control panel of your software or to access any information on the internet or on your own computer during the audit without losing eye contact with auditees. So for example, for me, 2, even 3 screens right now, I'm with 3 screens, but 2 screens it's enough. It's useful because for example, you can have the standard in one screen. And the other you are speaking or seeing the location. So a second screen may be useful to operate the control panel of your software or to access information on the internet or on your own computer during the audit without losing eye contact with auditees. Don't forget a writing pad to write your notes, or you can use the second screen for that too, for those that are more, are natives, okay, with that. Don't forget, keep your checklist, your ISO standard, and the agenda near you, okay? So let's see the differences between auditing offices and operations, okay? So while auditing offices, documents and records are normally stored digitally, so can be easily scanned, okay? So remote auditing office topics is relatively easy, because you will be looking at your own computer, at your own computer screen, at your own pace. You'll be surprised, really, you'll be surprised about the feeling that remote auditing digital documents is superior to on-site auditing the same documents in paper or screen, okay? Now, auditing operations, manufacturing, warehousing, receiving, is different. Normally, in these areas, the evidence is not stored digitally, and you need to observe the process, the controls, hard copies, and the resources. So like, for example, you need to check that the measuring resources are calibrated and the calibration is updated, for example. Stuff like that. Now, performing a remote audit. Let's see how this can be done in practice. So But before that, before I continue, let me point out that if you have an intention to become an internal or a lead auditor, or just want to learn more about auditing, so you have 𝗪𝗲𝗴𝗲𝗏's internal and lead auditor courses that can be a great source of knowledge. Okay, let me show you how it looks like. Okay, so it's like this. We have this one here. So we have here all the courses that have the word auditor. So internal auditor course for 9001, ISO 13485, 45001. This one is lead auditor course. So, but we have here for several standards. Okay. Yeah, 9001, internal auditor for 45001. Let's see here the example for 9001 internal auditor course. So you have here the curriculum. Okay. So for example, here, introduction to the internal audit. So this part here is about the standard. So this one, the introduction, these are the topics that you will see. So you can go there to this site and see and check the content, the curriculum. So if you go here for the lead auditor, let's see the curriculum here. So it's the same. There are some modules, okay, here that are different because this one is for the lead auditor. Okay, so managing the audit process. What's different? Debriefing sessions, dealing with conflicts, rated documentation. And we have, okay, in all our courses have this ASIC accreditation, okay, leading globally recognized quality standard international education. And by the way, you can see all the videos in these courses for free. You don't need to pay to see the video, to pay to see the videos of the courses. Okay. Yeah, I think it's this. Okay, now let's see how to perform the remote audit. Okay, so you can start with an opening meeting that can be useful to introduce some formality in the process, to confirm that everybody got the agenda and the schedule is still viable, or if there is any need for changes. So should you invite all auditees to opening meeting? I like to do it. So at least the managers that I will be auditing, okay? So you can do it through a video conference application with all attendees present as a group or individually, in addition to the normal considerations at the start of an audit. The auditor will need to explain the remote audit process. If I invite all auditees, they will be aware of the process, okay? Well, normally what happens is 3 or 4 are in the same room, the other 2 or 3 are individually, are in different, are in their offices, okay? Yeah, so now, opening meeting. So what is your auditing technique? Do you like to start with a tour view? Do you like to start with an interview and document review? No, let me present an example. So remember, you have a checklist as in any other on-site audit, okay? So you can start with an interview, okay, where after an initial conversation for establishing a rapport, a relationship, you can start with your questions. Now, if relevant or needed, you can ask to see relevant digital documents and records, okay? And the auditee can share the screen if needed. And you can ask permission to take screenshots, evidence for your report. So again, it's interesting to highlight that reviewing documents and records online works very, very well. Then you can ask the auditee to start auditing operations, and you want to start with a local view. So you say, okay, I want you to go to local number 2, okay, as you identified in your map. This way, the auditee can walk away, so that auditee or that escort auditor, or surrogate auditor, sorry, the auditee can walk slowly to that location and then stand stationary while gently moving the tablet or smartphone for a panoramic view of the area. So when walking to the location, the auditee should keep the camera facing forward, not turning side to side. So you can number these locations based on the workflow. From there, you can pick a specific operation and start your verification. It can be a particular equipment, a particular product. You can ask for any identification, records, traveling with the product, tools, calibration stickers, control status, non-conformity segregation, and so on. Okay, and you can ask for hard copies and check them, asking the auditee to zoom the camera, and if needed, ask permission for screenshots. You can ask to interview the operator. This way you can ensure authenticity of document evidence and overcome selective presentation of evidence of compliance. So actually you can audit everything, okay? You can audit everything. So Nyla is asking how to confirm the site shown in the video or drone. So one way is to compare what you're seeing with the smartphone or the drone or with the video, okay, so the video stream, with the map that you have, the plan that you have. So it's one way of confirming that, okay. It would be funny to be in another place doing like a theater, yeah, doing a theater. So they are in another place simulating that are auditing and that another place is being audited. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave here the link for an article called How to Perform an Internal Audit Using ISO 19011. Okay. Now, I have here 3 questions that I can answer right away because I think they are related with this topic. So John asked, does remote audit not downplay the use of observation as an auditing method or tool, especially in areas where tech is a challenge? Okay, it's like this. So remote audits do limit their direct observation, of course, but they don't eliminate it. Okay, so auditors can still observe through live video, screen sharing, photos, or recorded demonstrations. So where technology is a challenge, audits must be planned carefully, combining remote techniques with targeted on-site audits to ensure observation remains an effective tool. So in this situation, so the risk is higher, so perhaps the sample may need to be bigger, okay? Now, another question is from Carlos. Carlos asked, should we always have a formal opening and closing meeting, or can we have it informally, such as sending an email of what the internal audit is about? Now, according to ISO 19011, opening and closing meetings are good practices, so they are not mandatory. Are good practice because they set expectations, confirm scope, and communicate conclusions. So for internal audits, the formality can be adapted, okay? So, but replacing them with just an email weakens clarity and engagement. So even a brief meeting in person or virtual are preferable to ensure understanding and alignment. And I like more and more for internal audits, I like this opening meeting, okay? The closing meeting, everybody wants to have the closing meeting because it's where we present the report. So yes, but the opening meeting, I like to more and more with experience, because it's a kind of a break, the before the audit, and now it's another thing. Now it's not the before the audit. Now we are doing the audit, or we'll start doing the audit. So makes a break in the flow of time. It's like, you know, when people are going to do a job that has some kind of issues in terms of health and safety, and they start to work with a checklist. That checklist is the same like this opening meeting in the terms of are we prepared? Can we start? And like breaks the flow of time, and we are going to do something different now. Okay, so and the third question is from Mo. Mo asked how to verify the authenticity and credibility of objective evidence remotely if the organizations do not have a digital documentation process. Okay, so even without a digital documentation process, you can still verify authenticity and credibility of evidence remotely by using live techniques. So conduct interviews, request screen sharing, ask to zoom in on hard copy records, observe calibration stickers, control status or segregation on video. Okay, we can kind of make this kind of triangulation to prevent selective evidence and ensures that what you see is authentic and traceable. just as in an on-site audit. Yeah. Right. Okay, so some risks that we need to consider, okay, with a remote audit. So request a quiet area or room for the virtual meeting if there is a lot of background noise. Okay, in some places that's not possible because if you are going to audit the shop floor, it must be there. But both parties should make their best effort to confirm what was heard, stated, and read throughout the audit. Identify low Wi-Fi locations, yeah, before the audit during testing. So in the limit, you may have to ask photos and to do the audit based on those photos, or use only voice when video can be disconnected without a negative impact in the audit. Ask about poor camera control. Ask the auditee to train camera control before the audit. Poor lighting, so test lighting conditions and choose the best spots, okay? Yeah, for me, this is with time, with years, it's become more and more relevant. Yes. Be aware of battery autonomy. Okay. So if sometimes, okay, batteries go down, and we need to be careful with that. So ask the audit manager to give a word to auditees about the importance of performing the internal audit. Okay. Because sometimes people, it's like in the on-site audits, auditee personnel do not adhere to scheduled meeting times. Auditee not following camera instructions. Okay, choose a trustable person, explain the purpose and importance of internal audits. And handling of sensitive evidence and documentation. So it's best not to use email for record because of traceability issues. It's often not clear who are either copied on the email, that is, in blind copies, or who the message is eventually forwarded to. So be ready for technology glitches. Conference bridges fail, people can't hear and forget to turn on their mics. Some companies' firewalls have size limits for video and photo files and might require facility personnel to seek out IT help when uploading them. So all of these hurdles can be overcome with time and experience. Yeah, okay. Pros, okay, things that can be work in favor of using remote audit. So you are free from the 8-hour day audit. You may schedule blocks of 2-hour audit along for 2 or 3 days. Less experienced auditors will have more time to prepare their audits and feel less disruption in their daily work. So in a remote audit, it's important to allow for small breaks. So being seated and using the screen continuously can be tiresome. So to allow small intervals for stretching legs and reducing eye strain helps to enhance attention when receiving feedback. So it is also acceptable for the auditor to inform the auditee when an interruption is required to read and analyze information that has been provided. So this allows for increased understanding of the documentation and evidence that has been presented and for determination of additional questions prior to reconvening the interview. Okay. So this way, auditors can follow more easily their own rhythm and go deeper in the analysis. So auditors can review documents, records, and notes offline before continuing with the audit. So it's much easier for auditors to take a break between two interviews and review documents, records, and notes offline before continuing with the audit. Of course, reduce travel costs for organizations with several sites. Remote audits can mean significant savings, and avoid contamination issues around pen and paper into an area. It was 1994 that I performed well, let's say an almost remote audit, because I was auditing a company manufacturing some instruments for in the health industry. So for the nephrology. Okay, and we could. Going into the production will take a lot of time because we need to remove clothes, put another shoes, and so on. So remember using the CCTV cameras and microphone to ask questions and to ask for some information to the people from the shop floor. Yeah, 1994. Now, some cons, things that okay, make people say, doing remote audits, come on. So review documents and records will take more time, particularly hard copies, okay? Uh, Auditing is more than seeing. It is also smelling, hearing things, touching things, watching body language. With remote auditing, you will not notice a smell that should not be there or a strange vibration. You will only see what the smartphone or camera shows. So the immersion is not complete. Yeah, of course. At risk, we need to see how to mitigate that risk in our particular situation. Immersion. Okay, come on. The immersion is not complete. So remember, you cannot walk through certain areas with a video device. So, for example, I worked at a chemical plant where the risk of explosive atmosphere prevented the use of even common steel tools. And pictures were not allowed. Even the old analogic pictures were not allowed. The audit time will be much more focused, much more. Yeah, okay, this one. So fewer opportunities to share tips and improvement opportunities. So, and this is something that, yeah, I miss the when I'm doing remote audits, I miss this. So there's less time to provide tips and share improvement opportunities because there's less spontaneity. So what happens is that the audit time is much more efficient. There's less conversations when we are going from one place to another. No, so it's much more focused. Yeah, and of course, more opportunities for fraud. So remote auditing can promote manipulation of documents and records and forgetting or failing to present relevant information. Okay, it is easier to conceal items from the auditors. Yeah. So I leave here the link for an article called "Why Remote Audits Are Not Allowed for IATF 16949." Okay. Now, main challenges. So based on the questions that I received before this webinar, were about things about audit methods and classification. So questions about how much detail to record, whether to classify findings as major, minor recommendations, and whether all requirements need to be covered in a process audit. So I will speak about this during the Q&A. Behavior, auditor behavior, and auditee engagement. So how not to alienate auditees, whether auditors can suggest corrective actions. No, they should not do that. Or how to handle auditees pretending to have evidence. Remote, we'll see that also during the Q&A. Remote auditing techniques and credibility. So effect of remote audits. On observation, verifying authenticity of evidence remotely. Distinguishing remote versus on-site criteria, and whether remote audits can be as effective as on-site. We already saw some of those questions. About the audit program planning and scheduling. So question about the planning a 3-year cycle, differences between a first-time versus recurring audit, and the impact of hybrid working on scope. So this shows, let's say, a concern for structuring the audit program in line with ISO expectations. We'll see that during the Q&A. And standards and future updates. So whether ISO 1911 2018 covers remote audits. Yes, covers remote audits, but very, very thinly. And so currently there is an ISO DIS 1911-2025 where the topic of remote audits is much more developed. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Now let's see about the conclusion. So To conclude, remote audits will not disappear because they are a handy and efficient way to audit organizations. So they will be another option for managing an audit program. Although a remote audit can replace an on-site audit, the ideal is to combine the two because of the cons that we just saw. And to learn how you can use 𝗪𝗲𝗏's internal and lead auditor courses. So here's the link with more details. So we have here the link for our ISO courses. Yes. Okay, so there is also an internal audit toolkit for each of our standards. You can search, preview, and buy each document separately. If you are interested, it is a meeting link to schedule a call with our toolkit expert. He'll explain you how toolkit works and show you any document you'd like to see. So here's the link with a toolkit expert meeting link. You can also check this ebook, ISO Internal Audit, a plain English guide. Okay. Now, before we begin with the Q&A session, I want to mention that you can also ask me anything about audits directly. Just email me and I'll answer as quickly as possible, okay? So if you have to leave before this Q&A session, please fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar, okay? So let's see. Inet asks, is an email after the audit a closing meeting for internal audit? Okay, so if you decide that that's the way that you do the closing meeting is with an email, with a report, or with some basic conclusions, okay, it's up to you to decide. Okay, I prefer something more formal. Okay, an actual closing meeting, because it's important. There are some maybe some doubts, and this way we can ask. They can ask if the auditees can ask, and we can solve any doubts that occur. Sometimes they can provide more information. Yeah, but okay, if your organization decides that, yeah. Okay. So, question from Larby about screen. I think that it also could be more useful to use a data show when you're in a room with all your team. Yes, of course. Yes, that's even when even in an on-site meeting, if we on-site closing meeting or opening meeting, if we can use data show, yeah, everybody is focused on what is on the screen. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Jay asked, what is that molds in transit? Is an example for a particular company that works with molds. That's a place where the molds are waiting from one operation to the next. So yeah. So Naomi asks, if you are carrying out an internal audit and you are doing a document review one day, then the remote audit the following day, would you need to do an opening meeting on both days, or just the second day when they will be providing evidence to your questions? Not necessarily. No, opening meeting, we just normally, even when we are doing an audit in a two-day audit, we just have one opening meeting. Is the first day, okay, we have the opening meeting. What we can have in the second day, it's a kind of a I always mix. English is not my native language. It's all, but debriefing or briefing, yes, one of these we can have, because we may have need to change or to update the agenda, because what was planned for the first day, we could not complete everything, and now we need to make some arrangements in the second day to the agenda, to the audit agenda. Okay, but normally we don't do another opening meeting. That briefing meeting is just with the management system manager, the quality manager, the CISO, or whatever. Okay. Okay. So Jay asked, does your audit course certify individual as accreditor auditor? No, what we do is when people watch the videos. People watch the videos. People do an exam, and if they pass the exam, they get a certificate saying that they passed the exam. The certificate has also that stamp from ASIC, so to provide some kind of recognition. But to be an accredited auditor, okay, you need training, you need experience, you need so it's different, okay. 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝗀𝗏 asks, if you perform remote audit due to not reachable condition of that area or city and issue certificate, once it's possible to go there, do we follow up audit on site or will be still online? Oh, it's up to you, okay? It's up to you. It will be interesting, actually. With one company, I did that. I asked them and I said to them, okay, I will do the audit. I could go there, okay? I could go there, do the audit on site. They wanted an audit on site. And I told them this, okay, in week 2, I will do on-site audit, okay? I will go there, on-site audit. You will pay me for doing that audit. But I would like you to accept that for the possibility of doing a remote audit, the same audit, but remote on week 1. What I wanted to do is a kind of a test to check if my conclusions in the first with the remote audit were similar to the conclusions there during the on-site audit. Okay, so yeah, but it's up to you. So if you started as remote and you are happy with the results, okay, you can continue with that with the remote. You don't need to go there, even if now you can go. Okay. Now let's see some questions here. Lax asked, what is the level of detail that needs recording? So I find significant inconsistencies by external auditors when reviewing internal audits. Okay, so the level of detail in audit records must be enough for another competent auditor to review the same evidence and reasonably reach the same conclusion. Okay, that's the growl of audits. Different auditors in different time, they audit the same evidence or the same scope, same evidence, and they arrive at the same conclusion. Yes, means that the human factor was removed. The audit was objective. So audit findings should clearly link evidence to criteria, avoiding vague notes. Records don't need to be transcripts, but they must be factual, traceable, and sufficient to demonstrate how conclusions naturally emerged from the findings. Okay, so another question from Lax is, previously findings were classified as major, minor, recommendation. Why is this not practiced by external auditors? And can these classifications be used in internal audits? Okay, so certification bodies now follow ISO 17021, okay, which standardize findings as major nonconformity, minor nonconformity, or observation. Okay, recommendations. The word recommendations is avoided to prevent auditors from consulting. And yes, in internal audits, you may still use classifications, major, minor, opportunity for improvement, if they help your organization prioritize corrective actions, as long as the terms are clear and consistently applied. And by the way, I don't like using the word observation. You know why? Because I don't know any ISO definition for what word or for that word in the audit realm. Okay, so sometimes I see auditors using the word observation as a kind of, it's a minor nonconformity, but we call it observation. Oh, come on. If it is a minor nonconformity, it's a minor nonconformity. Let's be clear. Glenn asked, any ideas on how not to alienate the auditee? So I find that there are always excuses for their unavailability. Still, as a company, we are slowly building a culture where the benefits of internal auditing are linked to opportunities for improvement, outweighing the notion of being caught out and report as nonconformity. So first, don't position audits as fault finding, okay? Instead, frame them as a learning and improvement tool. So we are not there, they're not there to find nonconformities, okay? So engage auditees early by explaining the purpose and demonstrating how their input strengthens the process. Yeah, and send the audit agenda in advance to get approval from the auditees. That's one of the reasons for the audit agenda. Send in advance. When they approve, they accept. Okay, now I can. It's like it's locked. Of course, that there are always need for last-minute changes, but for most of the auditees, it's locked. They accept it. Okay, I expect to be received. I expect that at that time, if I say 15 minutes, if I say 20 minutes, if I say 30 minutes, I expect that those 30 minutes are mine, are for me. Okay. Marjorie asked, can an internal auditor suggest or recommend corrections, corrective actions to the auditee? What should be the right behavior of an auditor during an audit? Okay, so that's the difference between, let's see, some inspections from regulators or from tax people or whatever. No, an internal auditor should identify and report findings, not prescribe solutions. So the correct behavior is to remain objective, evidence-based, and professional, pointing out non-conformities or risks, but leaving it to process owners and management to decide on corrections or corrective actions. When an auditor prescribes solutions, they lose independence and compromise the integrity of the audit, or at least of future audits. Okay, because they ask, oh, what is the solution? How can we solve this? Oh, you can do this, and this solves the problem. Next year or next audit, you go there and the problem is still there, and say, oh, come on, the problem is still here. And they will say, but we told you, we done what you told us to do. And in that moment, your independence is ciao. You are now part of the system. Okay, so don't do that. Sometimes what I can say is, okay, in some companies I saw this kind of solution. In another company I saw this kind of solution, but I don't stick to one particular solution. Okay, it's up to them to do the root cause analysis. Okay, Abdul asked, challenges where the auditee tends to pretend they have the evidence. Eventually they don't. How to deal with this situation? So if auditee claims evidence exists but cannot provide it, the auditor must treat it as evidence not available and raise a finding accordingly. Stay professional, avoid debate, okay? And document the absence clearly. What I write is, the organization could not provide evidence of. Okay, I don't say that it doesn't exist, or no, could not provide evidence of, and okay, move on. You know that character of the movies, Mr. Spock. It's like that, rational, calm, logical. There's no evidence. Okay, no problem. They could not provide evidence of. Okay, and we don't need to waste time on this. Okay, it's like this. Sarah asked, is there any material difference in conducting a first-time internal audit than a recurring one? Well, according to ISO 1911-2018, the audit principles and processes are the same. Still, a first-time internal audit usually requires more preparation, understanding the context, processes and risks for the first time, and setting a baseline for future audits. So in recurring audits, the focus shifts to performance. It's not so much about, we hope, about conformance to the criteria, but to shift performance, effectiveness, and follow-up of previous findings. That's why audit objectives are so important. They guide both first-time and recurring audits, providing clarity on what the audit must achieve. Now, Adu asked, how does remote working or hybrid staff impact the scope of the standard? So I don't think that changed the scope, okay? But it does affect how processes are planned, controlled, and audited, okay? So the organization must ensure that communication, document control, IT security, and process effectiveness are maintained regardless of where staff work, Okay. Maya asked how to distinguish what can be audited remotely and what it takes to be on site. So what would be the criteria? So the distinction depends on the audit objective and the type of evidence needed. So if evidence can be confirmed through documents, records, interviews, or live video, okay, it can be audited remotely. If evidence relies on physical conditions, product characteristics, safety, or direct practices, perhaps on-site verification is preferable, okay? But okay, what some organizations do is do a kind of a hybrid, some audits on-site, some audits remote. David asked, tips on planning the 3 years audit cycle, a few big audits prior to an external assessment or loads of small ones. Okay, so tips on planning the 3-year audit cycle. Okay, certification bodies expect the entire management system to be audited within a 1-year period, okay? Since surveillance audits occur annually, okay? So we need to be sure that we audit the whole management system every year, okay? Therefore, relying only on a few large audits at the end of a 3-year cycle is not acceptable, okay? So the better approach, I think, is to plan smaller, focused audits spread across the year, ensuring full coverage of all processes every 12 months. So use risk, process importance, and auditor's experience as a criteria to balance the workload. So for example, if you have internal auditors with a lot of experience, you can have auditors with a bigger scope, wider scope. So if you have junior auditors, less experience, in that case, perhaps it's better to have smaller audits. If you don't have internal auditors, you contract an external auditor to do an internal audit. Yeah, in that case, yeah, companies normally what they do is one big audit and per year. Yeah, that's it. So Fionn asked, do you think remote audits can ever be as effective as on-site? Well, they can be equally effective when processes, evidence, and technology allow reliable verification, okay? So, however, for areas requiring physical observation, safety checks, or product verification, on-site audits remain essential, okay? So the most effective approach is blend, yeah, remote and on-site. Javier asked, we need to follow the same checklist for on-site and remote audit? This is my unpopular and personal answer, okay? It doesn't make sense to keep the same checklist for every audit, okay? Whether on-site or remote. Each audit should start with its own check objectives, which drive different lines of inquiry, and from there lead to audit-specific checklists. The format may look similar, but the content must always reflect the particular purpose of that audit. And that's not a very popular opinion. Now, Larby asked, is it mandatory to cover all the requirements when auditing a process? No, an audit is risk and objective driven, not a box ticking exercise. So you don't need to check every single requirement in one audit. What matters is that across the audit program, all requirements are covered over time, okay? And in each audit, you go deep enough to give assurance that the process is effective and compliant. And H asked, as ISO 1911 covered guidance, 1911-2018 covered guidance on remote auditing, and what are the expected updates in ISO DIS 1911-2025? So yes, ISO 1911-2018 already covers guidance on remote and virtual audits, yes. Regarding the expected updates on the DIS version, we have an update in auditing principles, greater emphasis on determining and assessment of risks and opportunities as part of the audit process. More guidance, yeah, a lot more guidance about remote audits, yeah. Expands the requirements for auditor competence, emphasizing the importance of continuing training and experience, and promotes a more performance-oriented approach to management systems, encouraging results-oriented audits. And Barbara asked, we returned after the pandemic to the on-site internal audits. I am curious of if a remote one could be, in some cases, a better solution. Yes, remote internal audits can sometimes be the better solution. So they save time and cost, ease access to dispersed teams, and can be very effective for document and record reviews. So the key is to choose on-site, remote, or hybrid. So based on audit objectives, risks, the type of evidence needed, and also consider auditor expertise and availability. Okay. Masht asks, if an auditee was rude all the time and didn't answer the right questions, what should be done in that case? My general advice is, first, always avoid conflict. Okay, and think like that character, Mr. Spock. Okay, so logical, rational, a normal human being like me. I think I am a normal person. We have feelings, but as an auditor, we should remove feelings from the equation as much as possible. Okay, so if an auditee was rude, okay, we need to put a kind of a shield to protect us from that, and we don't consider that personally, and we just focus on the facts, okay, on the evidence. And as I said, they didn't provide the evidence. Okay, the company or the organization could not provide the evidence. Okay, and we move on. There's no problem. Once, many years ago, I was doing an audit, and we sent the agenda in advance, and then I got there. I was starting to audit the production manager. Okay, and he got a phone call. And I said, okay, no problem, please. And okay, he started to attend the phone call, and then another phone call. And after the third phone call, I said, okay, there's no problem. So you don't have time for the audit, no problem. Okay, I will write that in the audit. There was no availability of time from the production manager for the audit. Okay, there's no need for conflict. Okay, that's the most important. Mo asked, what if the employee of the company conduct internal audit for the company he or she working? The corrective action should she advise? What if the employee of the company conduct? Okay, if the auditor is member, if the auditor is part of the company, as an auditor should not provide the corrective action, because the auditor is an independent. Okay, an independent is a person is not working his own or her own job, so doesn't know, is not an expert in that area. Okay, and what we write in the report is the non-conformity. Okay, is what we see, but to arrive at the corrective action, we need to go deep and we need to go below the surface, okay, to see what's below the iceberg that we see. Okay, we need to go after the root cause. And that example that I used, image that I use, metaphor of the onion, one layer, another layer, and another layer. Okay, it's dangerous to provide corrective actions, even if we are not an auditor, without doing an investigation. Okay, and an audit is not the right place to do an investigation about root causes. Okay, so no, avoid that. Now, Devi asked, if they cannot present evidence, will the non-conformance be raised? Yes, if evidence is required for making a decision about an audit finding, okay, or making a decision if an audit finding is positive or negative. So if their evidence could not be provided, so for example, the organizations say that we evaluate suppliers every month. Really? Okay, really? Every month? Yeah, we'll do that every month. Okay. Could you provide me evidence of the supplier evaluation of the last 3 months? oh, sorry, we don't have it here because of. Okay, so the organization could not provide evidence that is following their internal SOP that requires monthly supplier evaluation. Version SOP XYZ, version from 2018. So, yeah. Okay. That last questions from Jay. Sorry, still not clear how to become a certified auditor for ISO 27001 stuff. Okay. Jay, we have an article about that, okay, for the certification of auditors. I will look for that article, send to 𝗪𝗲𝗏 support, and 𝗪𝗲𝗏 support will send it to you, okay? The answer, okay? Because we need to be careful with the language, accredited, certified, and so this kind of things, okay? So, and that article, things are there. So I will send you that message, okay? So, right, I think I've answered all your questions. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so as I mentioned, this 1-hour webinar was intended to give a general overview about remote internal audits. For more detailed information, please take a look at our blogs. You can ask me anything about audits directly by email. You can also download this presentation deck from our website or take a look at video tutorials and documentation templates. We'll send you the email with all the necessary links. Finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey. So I would kindly ask to you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. You'll receive a link to the recording. If you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you'll receive a link to the short survey now, and the link to the presentation will be posted on our event page in a few minutes. That will be all. Thank you for your participation, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.